So Peter, thank you again. Here we are again.
We're
going to talk some more interesting things. And I've learned a bunch here with you here, and totally grateful. 20th of August, a most auspicious day for me, for us. And let's talk a little bit more about some of the things we've talked deeply about here that I think should be shared. I really do. A lot of the stuff you've said, I want other people to hear, not just me, and a wider audience, truthfully. So please do.
So we'll jump directly to what I consider as very important nowadays, how to look at it. It's a perspective, it's a contemporary perspective, nowadays perspective, how we can look at the legacy of historical martial art, European historical martial art, which is held, or like it's written in this evidence, like what we have in written form, German, Old German, partly Latin, and other languages. I'll refer mainly to the German written materials because these are known to me quite well. And so, briefly speaking, in that time, we speak about medieval time, let's say end of 14th century onwards. The word sport, as we know it, didn't exist.
Right.
The whole activity was it was structured by the ancestors, by the people, by their daily routines as something which had to be functional, and it served primordial purpose. So for knights, it was their duty to take care of the fief, to manage what was given according to their social status. Yeah. So taking care of the land, of the people, and its protection and possible cultivation. And there was not only destruction. As we speak about martial arts, we tend to see, thanks to the movies, and like kind of dramatic tools used in the movie industry, we tend to look at martial arts from a perspective that somebody is moving and like doing things in very efficient and very often destructive way. Punches, kicks, blows, strikes, whatever. Mm-hmm. But this is not the whole thing. There are much more, maybe not more important, but parallel facets or elements of the whole thing. Because for those people, it was not a question of choice. They didn't have a choice. They didn't have Asian martial arts and Brazilian martial arts and whatever.
Or self-defense arts. Plus, there was
there was no market with it. I mean, like the market they had was just what was there in the time, and it was just like passed on from the earlier generation to the contemporary generation.
And there were different stratas of social levels, and that, would you say that there were different stratas then? Different levels of the art shared, the ritterlich, the knightly, during this medieval time. It changed, we know, in the Renaissance, but that time you're speaking of, it was more relegated to knights. They had their art, and the peasants, what did they have? How to,
So what we know from the written tradition, which is closely related to so-called Lichtenauer's Kunst, or his written lineage, it is usually dedicated to the lords and knights.
Yeah.
But as we know, like it was not only always the lords and knights who were like touched by that. Then we can also speculate about the Jewish activity and the family clans and etc. But this is not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the education was happening on a verbal level, because in that time, decent, or I don't know, maybe somebody can tell like how many percentage-wise, how many people were literate, able to read and write.
Right.
But it was definitely not 100%.
No.
And reaching back like to the earlier periods, it was rather less than more. Then it started to change.
Yeah.
But still, it was the tradition was based on the verbal mechanisms, how to pass it on. So like we have the verses, we have various notes, some depictions, but mainly it was the written tradition formed in verses to memorize. The old knowledge was based on memorization.
Yep.
And learning by heart, not to forget, having it at disposal every time.
And you said how important, I agree with you 100%, we've talked about it, how important it was to remember. The memory was everything, not like today.
So yeah, the education was very much about having the things, not only
Memorizing.
read something and just having like I read it, done.
Yeah.
No, but study something meant, okay, so you studied something, how much of what you studied is still in?
Yeah, memorize.
How full is your hard drive, how much you can recall in its original form? That's why we have these verses. Not only in Europe, I mean, like it goes all over. We have this, system in sagas in the Scandinavian space. Then
similar.
we have more or less the same in India. Then we can also find similar things in other cultures. So this is the first thing. So the knowledge was not only about martial arts, yet the martial art was very, very important component of the whole thing. What was making the maybe knight or somebody who was responsible in his service to the king, to the realm, to the kingdom, as a complete man. So somebody who was able to fight, to wrestle, to fence, to shoot bow, to hunt, to do critical decisions, to being intelligent enough to evaluate what is important and how to prioritize, because these are the most important things. And so the martial art, as what we see it as today, because nowadays we are mainly hobbyists, right?
Yeah.
But they were not hobbyists. It was the
Self-defense.
primer.
Yeah.
It was the primordial education which had to be efficient. And this is something. This is a perspective which hasn't been touched so far. So, educational platform. Somebody who maybe never learned how to read and write was educated in a specific form based on the lineage of his predecessors, of the forefathers, and the knowledge of the forefathers has been passed on him with the utmost will and efficiency to let this young person to do his duty in its best. And so this is what we should look at. I mean, it's good to look at it from this perspective. So it is very, very efficient educational platform, how to educate illiterate people, how to build up not only fencing abilities, but how to build up critical thinking and etc. And now we will enter probably controversial space. Are we able to achieve this educational platform and to develop our mind, our perception, critical thinking in our modern environment? And this is a good question. Yeah. If we will simulate the environment of the old, then probably yes.
Yeah,
but if we will change the environment, we will definitely lose the touch towards this very important facet. Because it's super important, the hobby can have this feature, while if we will change the environment where the hobby is happening, we can completely miss this very important feature of this traditional education.
Yeah. That contains the basis for specifically the art.
The art.
I mean, we're talking about the kunst here and nothing else, not basket weaving or cooking in those days. And we've often talked about this in HEMA, in our circles, saying we can't really begin to conceptualize the surroundings that they were in, and how does that affect our understanding contextually of the application of the art today versus how they did.
Definitely one, like the proportion, perspective.
Yeah.
Nowadays people hobbyists, and I love, I hope nobody will take my words from the bad end. Every activity we do in the field of martial arts, or even the historical European martial arts, it's good. I mean, once a month it's good.
Yeah.
But the proportion of what they did in their early age, and then probably like the Bürgerfechten later in the citizen class people, just imagine for the comparison.
Sure.
We have people who were educated by those who knew the art. So somebody who did it whole life, maybe 40, 50 years old, still being able to perform, to show skill, agility, tactical, preparation or tactical equipment, how to structure the environment, how to become dominant, how to. That has been passed on somebody who was young. His perception was open, and he knew that this is what will make him superior. He will become a knight equipped with this true Kunst.
Imperative in many cases, wasn't
And he
by
had
choice.
time.
Yeah, it was no choice.
This person had time.
Yeah.
His teacher had time, and he had time. So
Yeah.
he could probably dedicate every day for a period of time, maybe weeks, maybe months, maybe years.
Yeah.
Every day. So if you calculate, just for fun, being as there was the old way, you had a children, the first son, the first inheritor, your successor.
Yeah.
He would go to your brother, to his uncle for the education. So he's 7 years old, and he would start his traditional education 7 to 14, then squire time 14 to 21 or 18, then his night time. He would be like appointed knight, bam, finished.
Yeah.
So he's 7, he's going to uncle's place. So he's got time, he's ready, and then he's starting to learn wrestling, unarmed combat. He's playing, he's wrestling, but he's also given classes about, and maybe he's trained in agility to have like more. So he's stretching, he's doing bridges, he's doing all the specialized exercises to be strong, to be flexible, and he's doing it from his age 7, 8.
Yeah.
And it goes on. So he will have maybe every day half an hour, or maybe 1 hour, but every day, which means he would have, let's say, 5 to 7 hours a week, which means 20 to 35 to 20 to 28 hours a month.
And that's-
24, sorry.
and that's physical.
7, 20, 20, yeah, 28. That's just the physical.
Imagine the military arts and sciences and the courses, the histories that we know they understood. We've read. You can see. Authors have written.
We'll come to that because then
Yeah.
the university education was also having fencing as a subject.
Rounding
so,
them out,
so
yeah.
just this primitive way for the illiterates. So if somebody spent 20 to roughly 30 hours being exposed to very highly erudite, highly erudite by the experience, the experiential knowledge was massive.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
like you look at like how Indian people, like some tribal people, not only Indian. I don't want to insult anyone, but I was trying, for instance, when I was in India, to wash clothes by using the piece of wood and water. I didn't have the skill.
You weren't effective.
I broke my clothes by doing it wrong, while the local people did it because they had the skill. They knew how to.
Yeah.
And so our ancestors knew how to do these things. They knew how to teach it,
Yes.
how to pass it on.
Yes.
So then we have 30 hours a month multiplied by 12. 12 months,
Yeah,
which
100
is
hundreds of
almost
hours.
400 hours.
Yeah, hundreds of hours.
400 hours a year,
Yeah.
multiplied by, let's say, 7 years.
Yeah.
So
Yep,
4 by
thousand.
7. So that we have again something around 3,000 hours. And now calculate if I'm a hobbyist and I can read and write, and I'm going once, twice a week to have 1.5 to 2 hours training, then I have some 4 to 8 hours a month.
And combine that with the fact that we don't have to do this for real. Hobbyists.
Absolutely.
Look at them. It was absolutely
So just,
important for them.
I think this is sufficient comparison. So
Yeah.
we would compare thousands of hours with maybe
Yeah.
lesser hundreds of hours a year. So what they achieved within 7 years, we would probably not achieve in our lifetime.
Lifetime. Clearly.
So this
Wow.
is something what we are missing when addressing to the very field of interest. Like yeah, this is historical fencing. I like it. You can get your gear or whatever. Pam pam pam. But there's no commitment. There's no understanding. It's insufficient. Fairly insufficient. From this point of perspective, it's not wrong, but it's just another angle how we can look at it.
So is there an answer? Is there a thing you can say that's helpful for us today? We cannot accelerate.
Being honest,
we cannot accelerate.
ask the question, what do we want to achieve
Yeah.
in touching the art? Do we want to really touch the art as Kunst, which would flow through us and we would really understand what is it about? Because it's not only fencing. The fencing is the smaller part of what we will be exposed to, because if we are full in, we have full commitment, and we have even twice a week, but then with our mindset being honest to touch the traditional education, we will definitely get more, because the exposition, the mindset will bring us deeper.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be feedback, but we'll get to it. So we have a platform, educational platform for illiterate people who spend hours, probably a few thousand hours of imperfectly, of elaborate training. And then they have experience, they have knowledge, and they have skill, they have performance, they have strength, they have speed, and they are becoming, functional. Their lifetime is maybe 45 to 65 years, depending on the situation. Somebody died earlier, but the general age in medieval time was not in common, like it was not 80, right? It was way lesser, so maybe 55 or something. And within this lifetime, they just collected enough, experience, when this knowledge they gained in the early age had to serve the primordial purpose. They had to be able to do good quality decisions, critical thinking.
Critical thinking. Yeah.
Nowadays we're taking courses, to how to do critical thinking at work, educating people, etc. This fencing platform, what we discovered in this, written treatises, is very much about how to build up in an individual. I wanted to say young, but no need to be young individual. No. Everyone can, by being exposed to this traditional concept, develop a very highly efficient critical thinking, being just able, not only in fencing, it's a general thing.
Yeah.
You can, that will affect your complete life, because your social environment where you live, your family, it can positively affect your family, your work, and the remaining fields where you exist.
It boils down to us having far more choices, I think, today than the original fencers did when it comes to choosing a form of self-defense, or a reason for learning self-defense. A reason. That's more important, to think about the reason that they chose this. And I said it was imperative for them to learn. Today, even though we're hobbyists, you can still commit and dedicate. You get out of it what, we used to say, you get out of it what you put into it. We have more choices today. Learning this, the way some of the things most of what you've showed me has already taught me, it is the choice I make. And not just in what cut, but the choice of your physical health, your mental, emotional state. There's so much more to this that I've learned from you. And that's kind of what I said here. I wanted you to share, and hopefully you'll continue sharing some of that.
Another thing which is very important to consider is, similar like in these, nowadays tournaments, the level of people you would potentially meet in some combat in medieval time would be quite alike. So somebody maybe didn't train, but like most of the people were exposed to physical activity and maybe to physical violence.
Yeah.
So it was not just about having the tricks in the physical level, but as Lichtenau is mentioning, you have to be smart, you have to be inventive, right? Yeah. You have to find ways, because you will most probably meet someone who's got very similar level of education in martial arts as you do. Mm-hmm. So you have to use your brains and your invention to overcome, to dominate, to save your life, to fulfill your duty. And this is what I think is missing. I'll be honest, is missing. Yeah. Is missing because sport, the modern concept of sport, is focusing on the performance only. And then there are other facets which are like kind of, pushed aside or behind. Even that they are still present, they are not present enough. The awareness of the whole thing has been somehow suppressed by the modern conception. And how to utilize our training time and how to focus our mind towards what.
And the competitive aspects today I've found, they limit the creativity, the spontaneity, the things that the art includes. This invention is not provided for.
It's questionable, but
in a lot of the, and I don't.
We don't talk about comparison of the old and the nowadays. Yeah. What we speak about is the perspective, how to look at it, because it can be corrected any moment. It's just how it's a question how to answer the very question. Is that what I want? Is what I get from my activity enough, or do I want to have more, or am I okay with knowing that there is more, but I don't want more? I mean, the question has many, forms, and it can be answered in one simple way. It's an honest answer, yes, no.
Yeah.
I am interested to get more, to get deeper to my own self and reflect.
Yeah.
Thanks to the art, to the traditional concept, to reflect more and get more feedback. Or no, I'm happy with what I have and it's just fine.
Yeah.
This is just all right.
It's choices. It boils down to we have more choices today than they did then. But the critical thought that takes place today would, you're saying we would be better off limiting and focusing to a yes or no question, as opposed to what I want from this is so multifaceted. Now you're hung up with so many tangents, and that's really not taking us closer to the truth of the matter, or what we really want, or what we should want. And I'm with you. I agree with you on what we should be wanting.
Definitely, we are intelligent people of 21st century nowadays, and we should be more specific in what we want, because I can kill my time in a training and just switch off because I'm tired from work. Fair enough, it's okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can very well get more if I want to. If I have the question and I want to get the answer, it is possible. The space is there.
And we had spoke earlier about the voluntary and involuntary. I wish you could go into some detail on that.
Yeah. During my practice and my studies in Asia, I met Dr. Bole, who worked, he was a physician, doctor, he was a researcher working for Indian National Institute in Lonavala, processing of data, how the traditional yogic practices affect the human health, and can be understood from the modern conception of health and modern science. And he, while being during my studies, being exposed to his presence and his classes, he was using voluntary and involuntary concept of consciousness, and this is something very, very old, yet not very widely integrated in our modern approach, even in psychology and these scientific or medical areas. But it is very important, because what we consider as ourself, is usually voluntary. So I want to eat this and this and that. But then there is the main question. The involuntary part of consciousness is dominant. So the feeling of hunger, the feeling of defecation, the feeling of doing things in order to be alive is an information which is coming not from below but from above.
Yeah.
So we are somehow driven. Yes, everybody knows that. Yeah, I feel like to pee, so I have to go pee. I have to answer this,
this
call of nature.
Yeah.
But then when we go to a situation when our sensory activity, our perception is delivering inputs into the nervous system and the brains are processing it. At that moment, if there is an evaluation of real danger, the involuntary part of consciousness is taking over. We call it reflexes.
Yeah.
So then whatever we think we're going to do is not going to happen, because the dominant part of our consciousness, the involuntary part of our consciousness, will take over. And this is the point. The traditional concept of martial arts, not only European, is bringing the individual to the simulation of the situations when our sensual activity is exposed to a stream of data which is bringing us to the moment of being really threatened. Then we are fully exposed and we are fully in the process to see whether we go against or along with our voluntary, against or along with our involuntary. So if in simplicity, if my training is going to be efficient in terms of the real situation as a self-defense or whatever, or if I'm going to fight with myself because I think I will manage, because for instance, in a mask it always worked, but if I have no mask, if I have no protection, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Because my own reflexes will just like switch me off and I'm going to defend instead of keep on the offense.
Yeah.
And this is fascinating because that is actually the very, very basic foundation of martial arts. If we want to address martial art or like fencing as a martial art, this is inevitable. This is the core. This is the very, very, you know, bottom from where we can build up something.
How is the involuntary affected by drilling and training by rote so that it becomes what we'd like to say muscle memory? Is there such a thing as muscle memory? Is the technical that you can access, or your involuntary responses to access that known and well-practiced muscle memory?
This is separate. We can, like, all the drill practices are basically separate. If you want to have them separate, it's okay. You can just, it's like a horse. You can put the, you know, the flaps over the blinders, and you can just like run faster, do things, you know, harder. But it has no connection to the voluntary, involuntary. If you block the sensual activity, you don't have the contact to yourself, to the deeper and higher levels of your own reactions. You cannot structure your training in accordance to be in harmony with your dominant part of your consciousness. Okay. And then the training can be very counterproductive. It can be very, very counterproductive.
Useless in some cases.
It can be useless because it's like whatever swimming, whatever activity, which is environmental. There's environmental condition. So if you specialize to do something in a specific environment, and then you change the environment, all the specific exercises you did might be useless. Yeah. It's like, I mean, boxing. Well, we have excellent boxers in the ring, but once you take off the gloves, and you go to bare knuckle, it starts to be questionable, because those who are doing bare knuckle all the time will surely do better, and vice versa. If the bare knuckle fighters will go to the ring with the gloves, they are kind of fucked.
It's an interesting parallel you make there.
So it's the environment, the setup of the environment where we are specializing ourselves. But this example is not very good, but it shows certain reality. What is the setup of the environment? Having gear, preparing, for specific work. Having no gear, preparing for specific work. And then this is still sport. Yeah. Where is the martial art? Yeah. And I've seen I'll just quickly finish. I've seen very nice short video from this, I think he's the Dutch guy, karateka, he's doing karate. And he was talking to a Japanese guy who he was interviewing about his Aikido. And he said, well, what we do is a traditional real Aikido, which is a real self-defense. It's not like this, smooth pompy throwing people around because they want to fly. And he said, it is different. When we are in a sport, we have conditions, then the conditions are like setting up our behavior, while if we, come out from the environment where we have conditions and we are not conditioned, we will just behave in different ways. So I'm not blocked to take away the eye, or I can even focus on very efficient methods how to cripple the opponent by going to vital points. Yeah. And that can be a core of my system, of my self-defense. But it cannot be a sport because it's meant for different use. Yeah. Okay. And it is the tiger and the sheep. It's the mental setup we talk about. It is, again, the voluntary, involuntary, what we want to experience during the training. And the very important thing is, not everybody needs to go through extensive, hard physical and psychological training to be efficient in self-defense. This is one way. Yeah. You can be very well a sportsman, but then don't claim to be a martial artist, because then it's hypocritical. Because then we might be missing the core. Because if there is a different foundation and different setup for the environment and everything, then it's just something else. It's okay to have it as something else.
Yeah, it's okay to be something else.
But
just don't call it what it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, in time we'll suffer. We'll suffer the clashing reality of being or not being what I claim to be. And some people nowadays I think it just get lost in between the lines. It's the same. It's not the same. Sportsman is not martial artist, because sport is defining its goal in its successfulness. Charts, stats, whatever, time, score. While martial art has different goal. Martial art is working. It's a formation of the individual. It's a complex process which has no charts.
It's not a new argument.
Right.
As long as HEMA is around, that's not a new argument. The differences. It's just a point to make, to understand the difference between the two and decide, again, decisions, choices, what you want to do with it. And it's perfectly all right to do either. I know we've had long discussions here lately about that.
So for people, for our friends, for our sword mates, for everybody who is in love with swords, it's totally fine to do the modern form of fencing. It's just
fencing.
Competitive. It's just fine.
Yeah.
But just
Sport
that there is
fencing.
the 4 letters designed, overseas as HEMA, so historical European martial arts, while what is happening in the tournaments is not historical, it's modern, so it's M.
Modern.
Then
Yeah.
European is also gone because it's worldwide, so it's not European. The form changed because the environment changed, so it's not anymore neither historical, neither European in its origin, so it's MW. And then martial arts is questionable because it's not a martial art, it's a sport discipline, so it should be MWSD.
Yeah.
It's a modern, worldwide sport discipline.
Technically.
Or longsword tournament or whatever, but it's not HEMA anymore.
Yeah, what's in the name though, brother? I mean, you've got people doing crazy things under the guise of HEMA, and have been for a while. But I'm with you on attempting to define what it is and what it isn't, just on a personal level, personal choice.
Absolutely.
It's not about a group-wide, hey, the community's got to do this or that. We've never had any kind of unanimity with that. It's always been, now, what do you want to do? I want to train with no masks, no gloves, and get closer, because that's what I want to do. And other people say that's, good, bad, whatever. It's a choice.
Absolutely.
I should have that choice as anyone else does. It's not going to affect anyone else, right?
I think like what is very important to achieve and come to the point with a common agreement, international common agreement, what is and what isn't historical fencing.
Yeah.
Because if we claim something to be historical, then forget about, like in bloosvechten, bloos means naked, so forget about gear. If you want to follow some discipline which is explicitly described, then it's good to follow it. Otherwise it's hypocritic. Then we're just shitting and peeing in our own mouth.
We've always been unable to define a date range, an era, a period. That's never been even mutually commonly agreed upon, because look at what the classic fencers have been left out. These late 18th century, some of these side sword systems, very, very amazing people teaching that, and have been prior to even the introduction of HEMA. There were Western martial artists who have been largely overlooked. They feel overlooked, and here's this 14th to 17th century, primarily longsword, competitive, and then you've got rivets. It's so diverse, it's good, but again, boils down to choice. Personal choice, what you want to do, and that's what we're talking about.
You just hit on it. It is not in the time, it is in the weapon, in the form of the weapon you want to follow, because then we know you like longsword, and longsword is of course not a classical fencing. It follows the earlier tradition because it's an earlier weapon.
Yeah.
Then you want to have a rapier. The rapier has its specifications, so you know if you're following side sword, the early rapier, or if you're following later schools.
So many iterations and evolutions of that as well.
It's basically clear, because then we can again come to some sort of hypocrisy, like argumentations. This is not necessary. Every activity which is happening in this field is good.
I like it.
And what I found very sad, people tend to go like, oh, I'm threatened, now I have to defend myself because I'm doing whatever. I don't want to name it. Just I do specific discipline, I like it, and I don't want to be threatened or questioned, so I will purposely put myself over so I have dominant position because I'm insecure.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, like what?
No. Yeah, I think I've seen HEMA mature. I've been doing it 20 years. This October, it will be 20 years for me. Never done it professionally. It's a hobby. I've been all over. I've taught. I've gained a lot from it. Learned a lot about myself. I think lately, people have a better understanding of that. People are
It's
understanding.
going, yeah,
We didn't
definitely.
early
It's,
on.
it's
Trust
going
me,
on.
we
It's
didn't have it
improving
early
all
on.
the time.
Oh, it was on. We would fight and curse each other online on various fora. Didn't get us anywhere. Took us away from training. And but I think I see today more acceptance of you do you, and that's awesome. And what can I learn from you? What can you learn from me? We do each other. So there's that.
The community,
that
the fencing, historical fencing community, as historical, including all the modern forms and everything, is amazing. It's a social phenomenon. I'm sure we'll have more research about that, because it's something which arose some 20 years ago, and it's still growing and it's beautiful. We just all love each other.
Developing.
Yet we have this, nonsense animosities. For all the sport fencers, for people who wants to do competitive fencing, doing competitive fencing is all right. Claiming it's historical fencing is unnecessary, because it is not historical fencing in its modern form. But it doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. And no, it is just what it is, and it's great. And it's not. You know what is really important? The agreement upon one thing. If we will all agree upon that it's not important to mix it, we will lose, objectively, we will lose the chance to study the traditional form deeper.
Yeah.
So it is vital to focus on the traditional concept and still have people who are deeply in. Even though it might be a bunch of kind of nerds who wants to do things without protection, yet there's going to be like a foundation, like fundamental platform where we are able to dig the information in its original form. That can be then utilized for the modern forms. And that was the original idea we had, a long time ago.
And better them, thus bettering them, providing them with more, without alienating anyone. There's always a more intelligent answer than to just curse someone and say, I'm superior, I feel threatened. You know what you said earlier, we have it. But I'm telling you, Peter, I think there's a lot less of that today than there was
I
earlier.
believe so, yeah.
There may be, but especially in North America, I can speak for, here we are in Dallas, Texas, in August of 2023. It's really a better, much more genteel, polite environment
I can only
we
confirm.
should be.
I can only confirm.
But I'm with you. What you're doing over there with the guild, that's where it's at, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here, and having you here in my house for this time has just been amazing, brother. Thank you, and
always pleasure.
I hope people pay attention to what this man says. Listen to this guy. All right, thanks.